Okay. This should work. I think. Make sure it's behaving. Alright. Oh. Shoot. Okay. Alright, that shouldn't come through because... Yeah. Alright, cool. Good. Right. So, for those of you that checked my videos early, I didn't have a video this morning. I forgot to hit record. So, here's a late video. I'm having to do it at home. So I'm going to try and get through the material rather quickly. We've only got excuse me, a little bit of the video to take care of, so that's good. The sound quality might be a little bit different, but you know, I'm using my headset rather than the usual mic. Hey, baby. I'm talking and my cat is attacking me now. Yes, hello. Anyway, alright. So we finished with this. Doctrine of Success. Carnegie saying the wealthy should aid the poor, not the government. But no charity, only philanthropy, so that they could put their name on the side of buildings. Capitalists didn't like government involvement, but only if it helped them. Or rather, they didn't want government involvement if it was like regulation, but they were fine with it if it helped them. I don't know if you can hear this cat purring. Purring to the mic. Anyway, yeah, you can push anyone up the ladder. You cannot push anyone up the ladder unless he's willing to climb, says Andrew Carnegie, the man at the top of the ladder. Challenges to laissez-faire. Lester Frank in Dynamic Sociology attacked laissez-faire, seeing society as the organization of happiness. Felt it was the government's duty to aid citizens. Richard T. Ely in the the labor movement. He decried the social ills of massive businesses and enterprises. Henry George and Edward Bellamy lamented disparity of wealth. Henry George saying that amid the greatest accumulation of wealth, men die of starvation. He blamed rent, cost accumulated on a single plot of land. He saw that as unearned increment, which, you know, fair. Do not attack the cord, baby. Okay, sorry, the cat is in my lap now. Bellamy wanted a strong central government where large-scale firms would be taken over and given to a workers' collective, which, if you're familiar with certain social movements during this period, that might sound familiar. Well, they did not support Karl Marx, who also liked the idea of getting rid of rent and having a workers' collective. However, he also wanted a violent socialist revolution where corrupt capitalists and the whole government will be overthrown and create a classless paradise. So that was beyond what they wanted. Sorry, distracted. Lester Frank Ward, pessimism is a product of a hostile social state. Its answer is a substitution of a friendly social state. Henry George, what has destroyed every previous civilization has been the tendency to the unequal distribution of wealth and power. Yeah. Bellamy, primal principle of democracy is the worth and dignity of the individual. And then finally we have the Beard Man. I laugh at the so-called practical people and their wisdom. If one wants to live like a beast, it could naturally do so, or it could naturally do. To turn its back on humanity, suffering, and only care about its own pelt. And then down here, I always mention in my class, philosopher, political economist, revolutionary prophet. It's like, getting a little overboard there. I don't think Marx was quite that quite all that. I mean, he did have a lot of things to say, but Prophet might be going a little overboard. All right. Anyway, so the Gilded Age, this late 19th century, the wealthy and especially those with recent wealth valuing opulence over good taste. So uh, gold plating everything. Gaudy. Well, everything, as opposed to actual. Well, again, good taste. This was coined by Mark Twain and Charles Dudley Warner, two of the biggest writers of the time. This was meant to only refer to the very wealthy, but it could also apply to those in the upper middle class who often would purchase outside their means. This was, people who would spend money that they didn't have just to appear that they were more well off than they were. There was also a slight expansion of the role of women. Attended social, cultural, and political gatherings. This, of course, was limited only to the whites of the era. Black families were still very much underprivileged in the South. Any attempt at becoming more economically advanced was hindered by white politicians who set up a system of racial segregation, which we will get into a little bit later. So here we have the trust funds point of view. What a funny little government, where the trust funds were seeing the government as just a way to make money. And this was only like this was referring to like the early don't bite me, cat. Lobbying systems where the corporations would like pay politicians to pass laws that benefited them, as opposed to like actual corporate guys being in government and like shutting down parts of the government. Yeah, there's a lot's happened this past weekend. If you're not aware, you should probably look into it. There's some billionaires that have been like in our taxpayer money, in our taxpayer like information that shouldn't have the clearance to do that. But anyway, moving back to history real quick. Yes, this as well. Protectors of our industries. So here we have Fields Millions and Gould's Millions and Vanderbilt's Millions, and the fat cat sitting up here. Cloth workers average $9 a week. Linen workers 11 a week. Iron workers 7. Lumber workers 6. Leather 7. Paper 6. And down here, all this is on the backs of the workers. And then here we have hard times coming in. The water's rising. And they're having to hold all this up while these guys are sitting up here doing just fine. Also, I would like to mention, Puck is another magazine we'll be seeing a lot of going forward. Now, this is a nice metaphor for like when there's economic distress, any kind of any kind of disruption in the market. It's going to hit the people at the bottom first because the people at the top are, well, they've already got all the money. Who cares if food prices go up a little bit? It's not going to hurt them. But here's the thing. We've lived through this. We lived through this just, what year is it now? 25? 5 years ago now? When the pandemic hit and, everybody was like out of a job or having to work from home. And like everybody was taking a hit, and like the average American was losing a lot of money. The people at the top were gaining a lot of money. I think like the average, like across the country, Americans lost something like It's like 600 million or 600 trillion. Like 600, a lot of money. And then like the top like 10% gained that much money. It's weird how that works. And this isn't just some like fancy drawing from the 1800s. It's something we've lived through. I just want to just to further point out that like this isn't just some class that you guys have to take a test on and then need to not ever think about it again. We're literally living through this, you guys. Just wanna point that out. This one we'll get more into a little bit later. This is Pullman. Um, his company made train cars. His workers lived there, so they had to pay rent. And during a an economic crisis, he lowered his wages, but he kept the rent high. So the guy who paid you was paying you less, but the guy you were paying your rent to, you still had to pay the same rent to. So yeah, that's the whole thing. Anyway, urban elites spent a lot of their money building big mansions, as well as secondary and vacation homes that were often just as big. Vanderbilt's constructed Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm sure a lot of folks here have been there. 250 rooms, 40 master bedrooms, indoor pool. There's a bowling alley in there as well. Um, like there's a greenhouse. I mean, just on the grounds, not like inside the mansion. Um, what else? I've got pictures. It's got a lot. Opera houses. The rich families wanted to show off their taste and sophistication. Again, just like spending money to show off like how great they were. Vanderbilt's, Rockefellers, Goulds, Morgans financed the Metropolitan Opera House in New York City. I've got a picture of that as well just to show you guys how big it is. White collar workers increased in number. Managerial, clerical, and technical positions opened up. Um, again, this was goes back to that like the some of the boring stuff we were talking about before. But like these middle class jobs opened up because they were necessary. You needed a lot of people working in the um, middle manager positions to keep these massive corporations running. Don't bite me. The middle class workers also had some things they could do to take their minds off of constant work. Um, Comfortable mass-produced furnishings, magazines, newspapers, all sorts of fiction. I mentioned this in pretty much every class, especially when we get to this section. Anytime there's like a boost in readership, it's almost always women. That just tends to be the pattern of things. Stop. Sorry, my cat is he's such a nibbly little shit. Um, Organizations appear to deal with the problems of industrialization. Charitable organizations like the American Red Cross, General Federation of Women's Clubs, American Historical Association, and the YMCA expanded. This was not only for healthcare, like American Red Cross, but also like helping with the psychological impact of industrialization. Um, there was a like a major change in the human pattern of life and work with with the industrialization. We'll talk more about that in the next chapter, but like basically, since humans started living in I would not even cities, but like settlements. So I mean, Mesopotamia is the earliest we have writing, but even before then, like literally prehistory. So like 5,000 plus years ago, um, we the pattern of human history has been the sun comes up, you get up, you work in the fields. Um, you work alongside usually animals. You plant stuff. You harvest stuff. And when the sun starts to go down, you go home and you go to sleep. Um, your work is uh, is part of nature, really. I mean, while humans have always like bent nature to their whims, more or less it still was part of nature. But with industry, with these big factories with electric lights, um, you went in when the clock said you did, and you worked until the clock said you were done. You were inside the whole time. You were running these big, loud machines. Um, these big, loud, dirty machines, often, spewing smoke or steam or, hell, sometimes ash. Um, and a lot of times you wouldn't get out until like the sun was already down because you'd have electric lights. Um, and as we'll see in the next, hold on, thought I heard a cat crying outside. As we'll see in the next one, like it affected people that were like used to. For God's sake, give me a second. I need to check on my outside cats. We've got dogs roaming around the neighborhood. I need to make sure they're okay. Okay, let's try that again. Make sure am I coming through all right. Okay. And back to this. Okay, sorry about that. Get back situated. And of course, I've got a light flickering as well. Get deal with that later. Oh yeah, pictures for Biltmore and stuff. So yeah, if you've never been to Biltmore, this is what Biltmore looks like. The blue-green like trim there, um, that's because it was originally trimmed with copper. That was just like the way it was done back then. Um, I actually don't know what the thought process was with that. Um, I guess maybe it was just pretty. I mean, because copper's got a nice color to it. But it's oxidized since then. That's why it's that color. There's one of the dining areas. Whoops, dining areas. There's the grounds. Um, there's a greenhouse somewhere. I don't remember exactly what the greenhouse is, but the greenhouse is cool. Um, there's also an area that's got like a garage uh, where they've got an automobile from like the early 1900s where Vanderbilt's wife she drove it around because he didn't drive, but she did. So I thought that was pretty cool. There's a library, one of the libraries. Again, there's like five. There's the Opera House. Again, massive. Again, 1883 they built this place. 83? Yeah. And then this is just digital newspapers. It's a place you can get primary news sources. You can just grab the stuff online. The stuff they've managed to save, at least. Not everything's been archived, but a lot of stuff has. All right. Obviously, 1800s, women were expected to stay home. There were colleges for young women, but they're mostly seen as a means to uh, provide refinement as opposed to getting them a career. Physicians summed up the thought of the time: women could only use their brains but little and in trivial matters, and should concentrate on serving as the companion or ornamental appendage to man. Which, like, okay, it's that's a little I mean, degrading to say the least. Okay, are you cats gonna wrestle in my lap while I'm trying to do class? Is that what's gonna happen here? Yeah, there we go. All right. Consumer culture made it difficult to just like stay at home because uh, the domestic role meant buying food and providing entertainment, um, and also jobs that they would take kept them not very visible as a worker due to often being in the service industry as a hairdresser, store clerk, etc. There were some leisure sports for women who, you're just biting her on the head. Sorry. Um, had economic independence. This was seen to offset the stresses of an intellectual life, provide a more rounded woman. Again, not like women's sports as a thing to do, but just like to make a more rounded woman to be a better overall wife. Men's leisure time. Some joined social clubs like the Oddfellows or Masons to have some sort of masculine social environment. Played physical sports to deal with the crisis of masculinity. Because middle class men no longer work for themselves. Again, this whole like factory thing was a problem because, well, most men before this point, would work farms. Like even back in Europe, like the peasants, you still, I mean, even though you worked for like a lord or whatever, you were still working your own farm. But here you were just like getting up and going to a factory and just like working the factory all day. And even the middle class, um, even if you were like managerial stuff, you were still working for somebody else. Edgar Rice Burroughs, Tarzan of the Apes. This symbolized the idea of primitive manhood against the vices of becoming over civilized. We'll get into that in a minute. So I've got some images here. I guess these are like college girls of the day. And some sport. Oh, not sports yet. Commercialism. Again, I would say horrible racist caricature, but like everybody's a weird caricature. Even the cat, like the cat looks like a little mutant thing. So there's a lot of weird going on in this image. Some sports. There's a dog in this one, so it had to be included. Um, Also freaking lacrosse, man. Like this isn't a dainty sport. This is a break your leg sport. Um, yeah. Now this image may be a little bit later than like the 1800s, but based on like the hairstyle. But still, this isn't a dainty frilly sport at all. Here is your 1800s manly man. He's got the mustache. He's got the chest hair. He's ready to. This is a boxer. This is a bare fist boxer. Um, you go into the ring and you get beat the crap out of somebody else while he beats the crap out of you. And compared to that is Tarzan, which is weird because he's supposedly like raised in the jungle by apes, and he's looks like he's a professional like competition swimmer. He's got no body here. I don't know what's up with that. I mean, granted, I guess like that'd be a pain in the ass to illustrate, but still. Also, needless to say, it's the 1800s. Uh, the racism isn't getting any better. So in the South, African Americans were facing barriers to voting. Poll taxes, which meant if you were too poor to pay the tax, you couldn't vote. Which, to be fair, was a thing like way back early in the American Republic. Um, the founding fathers didn't want the poor to vote, so just FYI. Um, and also literacy tests with a grandfather clause going back to 1860. So, um, if you can't read, then you can't vote. But if your grandfather could read in 1860, then you can vote. So this would mean that a lot of like poor white Americans who couldn't read, their grandfathers would probably be able to read. But if you're a poor black American, you're probably not going to get an opportunity for education. And your grandparents in 1860 would have been slaves. So they 99.9% would not have been able to read. So this is blatantly targeting black Americans. Just that's blatant right there. So in the 1890s, segregation spread through the South. These were Jim Crow laws, which is named after a minstrel. A character in a minstrel show, where a white person would wear blackface because it's the 1890s. Um, this separated blacks and whites in public facilities. In 83, Supreme Court struck down the Civil Rights Act, so Southern governments could do what they wanted to segregate schools, transportation seats, hospital beds, and graveyard sections, because we can't have the racist white ghosts be upset. 1896, Supreme Court, excuse me, Officially sanctioned Jim Crow and Plessy v. Ferguson, stating that equal but separate was constitutional. It usually says separate but equal. Whatever. It must be that in the book. I don't have it out. I don't have it in my hands right now. Of course, the equal part was hardly enforced, which I will show you guys some images of that. As the court put it, and I mean, even in the court statement, they're not even really trying to pretend. If one race be inferior to the other socially, the Constitution of the United States cannot put them on the same plane. So it's just straight up saying, we don't think the blacks and whites are equal. And any who try to step out of line would often find themselves dead. 1,700 African Americans were lynched between 1884 and 1900. That number is actually going to go up, as you're going to see here for too long. We'll get into that in a later chapter. So here we have some images of signs from the era. You see here, everyone's in the same category. That's lovely. Restrooms, and then again, separate but equal, totally. If you've ever sat in the back of a like a city bus or really any kind of bus, you know how great those seats are. Again, completely equal water fountains. Here's a fun one. Yeah, separate but equal. Equal in that you can go somewhere else, which is actually something that's come up recently, well, in the last few years, for other minority groups, where it's like, oh well, if you don't, it's like, well, we don't want to serve you here because it interferes with our beliefs. It's like, well, you can't do that. I was like, well, go somewhere else then. Well, what if everybody said go somewhere else then? And here are some actual laws here. Unlawful, play together in company with each other in any game of cards or dice, dominoes or checkers. This one especially feels petty. Like, I don't know. I mean, like the bathrooms and the water fountains and like public transit, like, oh, don't let them be near each other. But like two people playing cards or dice, dominoes, whatever, like, okay, which granted is Birmingham. Unlawful for white prisoner handcuffed, otherwise chained or tied to a black prisoner. Again, like, that feels petty. They're both prisoners at that point, but the black prisoner still is considered less. And then no black barber shall serve as barber to white women or girls. This one is part of this, like, moral panic of, oh, the black men are gonna get our women. Yeah. Also, I'd like to point out, we're talking about like the 1860s, 1890s, getting up to 1900 here, but all of these are taking place after 1900. 1930, this one here, 1930, 1926. These are, I mean, yeah, it's 2025 now, but these are relatively, this one's not even 100 years old. This stuff isn't that long ago, relatively speaking. I mean, this is post World War One. Well, both of these are post World War One. I mean, this one's up to almost World War Two. All right, politics. Yeah, this is a section with like three little subheadings, and I put it all in one because it wasn't a lot to it. Oops. As the book put it, Great men were seen as those who rose to lead corporations. Unaspiring men made it to the presidency. After Johnson was impeached, the power of the presidency was reduced. That said, those who became president were still usually hard workers, honest, and were often Union generals who served during the Civil War. But they weren't like these big heroes that everybody remembers, which is to say, I'm not an American historian, and I sure as heck don't remember who they are. um, and they're not going to be on any test because they're not important. I mean, pretty sure the next president we talk about is probably going to be, well, it might, we might not talk about another president until McKinley. And the only reason we talk about him is because he gets shot, and then it's Teddy Roosevelt. We'll see. I don't remember if there's any before him because I don't care. American presidents are boring. Um, Congress didn't do much anyway. House and Senate were controlled by opposing parties, and even within each, the numbers were close, and the congressmen were unruly. They would physically fight each other, which even then wasn't that uncommon. And before the Civil War was even more common. There was an incident of a South Carolina senator like beating a Massachusetts senator over the head with his cane to the point that the cane broke, and not like a little narrow cane like we have today. Like it was a big, it was basically a club. Um, yeah. In 1869, a cabinet officer complained, "You can't use tact with a congressman. A congressman is a hog. You must take a stick and hit him on the snout." Yeah. And again, I wrote this in like 2014. This was before the circus really happened. Despite the stalemate, the electorate was quite energized, or at least they were entertained. Campaigns began looking more like stage performances. Candidates used their speeches to arouse passions and prejudices, which again, I wrote this in 2014. This was before everything. Um, by partisanship of your own region, religion, and just person disliking the other side. Um, but even with the party loyalty, the parties themselves were internally divided, which again we'll get more into later. Um, so here we have an image. The public be damned. I don't take any stock in this. Oh, I don't take any stock in this silly nonsense about working for anybody's good but our own. When we make a move, we do it because it's in our own interest to do so. I always found the anti-monopolists come the cheapest. So this is again like big business, treading on the government and having Congress and the what's that, legislature? Yeah, like chained up. This is referring to lobbyists. If they could see us now, they would probably just have an aneurysm and die. Anyway, here's some sort of political gathering. There's a guy up here like giving a speech or whatever, and they're all having a great time. This dude is like drunk at 10 a.m. And actually, I noticed the clock while I was teaching this today. It is literally like 10:10, like 10 minutes till 11. There's some kids with a dog. There's another little yappy ass dog there. Everybody's having a great time. You can see the stars are in a different pattern than what we have today because we didn't quite have all the states we have now. I think there are still a few territories um, in the West that hadn't quite made it a state yet. Obviously, we didn't have Hawaii or Alaska yet. There is William Jennings Bryan and Arthur Sewell. I don't think Bryan ever made it to a presidency. I know he ran a bunch. I think we talk about the president's next chapter, which we just like, hey, this presidency happened and this guy won, and then we just like we just like run through the presidencies real quick. We're 100% not gonna go over them. There's McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt. The American flag has not been planted on foreign soil to acquire more territory, but for humanity's sake. To which I say, sure, buddy. This is when we took Cuba, which we will 100% talk about. The real issue. Do not know what you think about it, but I believe it is a good deal better to open up the mills of the United States to the labor of America than to open up the mints of the United States to the silver of the world, which again is like, I don't know. It's an economic thing that I don't 100% get. All right, there it is. Industrial progress, business tycoons, the working class are out of luck, but the culture made them think that they could maybe make a lot of money. Organization replacing individualism, laissez-faire, replacing government aid, but obviously corporations getting government aid because corporations got whatever they wanted, and that really hasn't changed. So yeah, that is that. Apologies for getting it out late. Um, and let's see, how long did that go? 42 minutes, good. Even with my break, it didn't take too long. So, that's peaking. Sorry. Um, that's that. I'm actually turning that down a little bit. I apologize. I'm being too loud. So that's the end of that chapter. We will do the study guide on Wednesday. That should already be up on Blackboard. And yeah, I'll see you guys then. I should have the normal mic, and I apologize. I realized I was probably talking really loud. I'm used to having to do that. Anyway, till then, bye for now.